Hello, everyone. Yes, it's a couple minutes early, but I saw some people were already in here. And since I am the stage manager, as well as the performer here, I get to start the show when I want. So we're starting a couple minutes early. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody is doing well. It's been a couple chilly days here in Clearwater Beach, Florida. I know that sounds really, really funny. And if I tell people what hello, Cherie, what the degrees are, everybody's going to make fun of me because I'm sure it's colder everywhere else. But I have to tell you, it is unseasonably cold. I think we got some northwest wind coming down from the north. And I was just outside on the east side of the building, and it is chilly. It is chilly. I just was out there in shorts and a t-shirt. I was out there for a couple minutes, and I was like, I think I'll go back inside now. But I'm doing good. And I'll get into everything that went on here since last time here in a few moments. But got a lot to talk about tonight. Got a lot to talk about. I'm sure you've seen that I've posted some Stephen Kocher stuff in the group, and I am going to talk a lot about that. And I got a lot to talk about regarding this Friday's episode because it's going to be a long one. Just brace. You're going to have to make some time for this episode this weekend. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. You know me, I don't care how long the episodes are. All I care about is getting everything done thoroughly. So we'll get to that later in the program. All right, it's 9:00. Time to officially start the Unfound Live Show for December 2nd, 2020. A lot of twos there. December 2nd, 12/2/2020. That's a lot of twos. 4 twos. That's a pretty good hand in poker. But December 2nd is my nephew John's birthday. That is my brother Brian's son. And John is 35 today. Yep, 35. I have a nephew who is 35. I also have a nephew who is 42. And I have a niece who will be turning 37. And I am 50. That's because my brother and my sister who have kids are quite a bit older than I am. But yesterday was my dad's birthday. He turned 84. And so I sent him a card, but he did not get it on time yesterday, but I did send him one. And speaking of my dad, next Thursday, I will be flying to Pennsylvania. So if I think it's cold here, wait till I get to there. And next Thursday, I'm flying up there. Then the next day on Friday, I'm driving him in his Jeep that he has, Jeep Grand Wagoneer, Grand Cherokee, whatever, back to Florida. So he's coming to Florida. He's going to be with me for as long as we can stand each other. So we'll see how that goes. If you will remember, he was down here for a month last year. I thought he was going to be here well into February or something. And then he was here about a month and he says, I'm going home. So he drove back to Pennsylvania. I think he was just bored. I have to continue to do, of course, Unfound's work. And I really am just kind of a boring guy, even to my dad. It's one of the reasons I don't have pets. If I had pets, I'm serious. I would bore a dog or cat or rabbit or pig or anything else. I would bore them to death. I'd wake up one morning and they'd be dead and there'd be an autopsy done. And the vet would say, yeah, these pets died of boredom. So we'll see how it goes, but that's what's going to be happening on the end of next week. What am I going to do about next Friday's episode? Haven't figured that out yet. I'll figure out something. So let's see who is in here. We got Delane with the little hands. Hello, Angela. Katie B in the place to be. Sharon Tammy from Canada. Tammy, I want to hear where you are from in Canada, being that I've spent some time there in my life. Charlotte, Karen, Laura. Hello, Cherie. I already said hello to you once. I'm saying hello again. Cherie controls the chat with her blue name and the wrench there, so don't tick her off. Hello, Twinkle. Paula, hello, Kathy. I have to admit that Kathy and I had a very good phone conversation today about some business stuff that I cannot go into, but it was good talking to Kathy today. We spoke for about an hour, and I really enjoyed it. Cherie says it's cold in South Texas too. Well, Cherie, yeah, you're right across the Gulf from me, so that I guess that doesn't surprise me. Hello, Concha. Charlotte says 34 degrees in Lima, Ohio. I've been to Lima, Ohio. Joy and Ruth. I had an Aunt Ruth. That was my grandfather's sister, Aunt Ruth. Jasmine, Tammy, Victoria, British Columbia. See, I've never been over there. Tammy, I've just only been to Ontario. I've been around the province of Ontario on the east side of Canada. So, remember, just to remind all of you, I do this every week. Please like this video. Give it the thumbs up as you are watching it so it can appear on the algorithms on YouTube. And if you are not yet a subscriber to the channel, the Unfound Podcast Channel on YouTube, please consider signing up so you get alerts when we upload videos. And we've been doing a lot of that lately. In addition, if you'd like to contribute to the program while you are watching tonight, please find the little gray square with the $sign in it, and that is the Super Chat. And you can donate funds to the program as you watch. It's called Super Chat. And so I, of course, and my assistants would appreciate that. Thank you very much. So yeah, Dad turned 84 yesterday. My nephew John turned 35 today. I did text him earlier today. He's doing good. He moved from Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, Washington recently. Weirdly enough, the Pittsburgh Steelers played today, and I've not watched them all year. I've kind of taken a break from football, and I really haven't missed it much. But being that this was kind of a historic day, the Steelers had not played on a Wednesday since the 1930s. I thought, well, I'm going to watch the game. Pretty good game. I think Ravens had a chance there at the end, but Steelers put it away. And so the Steelers continue to be undefeated at 11-0. And do not ask me why I'm yawning. I did this on Sunday night during the think tank, and I'm not tired. I don't know what it is. Psychosomatic or something. I don't know. But so the Steelers are 11-0, and they very going to play very quickly again. I think this Sunday against the Washington football team. We know what their nickname is. And this past weekend, I had a tournament in DeBerry, Florida, and played okay, not great. I think it was a factor of me never seeing the course before. I went over there Friday, played it, but, you know, it's tough to just see a course once and then expect to play really, really, really well. And I think a lot of the players in my division I was playing against had played the course at least a few times more than I had. And I think it showed. And I had one of the better scores in the second round, but the first round did not help. And so I finished like 12th out of 29, which in intermediate, which is not good. So, but I did have some good shots and some things, but I'm going to have to keep that in mind for the future, that playing courses for the first time, that you got to get in more than one day of just looking at it and everything. If you expect to play well, if you expect to finish high in the division, it's just probably a little bit too much to ask. But it was a nice course. Would I play there again next year? We'll see. But it was okay. It was okay. Not one of the best courses I've ever played, but it was okay. But that's quite a drive over there, 2 hours plus. And then on the way back, there was a wreck on the 275. And so I had to take a back way to get home. And it took me like 3 hours to get home, which should have been only like 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I spent a little more time in the car than I expected. But it was a good weekend. Stayed in a nice place over there. Got some work done over there. Did a Unfound Now when I was over there. Made some phone calls and things. So I was able to get some work done while I was there. So who else is in a Twinkle? Sometimes yawning means that you are comfortable with us. Let's go with that. Okay, Twinkle, I'm going to go with that. Ruth says, I'm named after my dad's sister. Okay, well, that's okay. Ruth, maybe you have something there in common. Okay. So those are some of the things that are going on with me that have happened. I hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving. Last Thursday, I went over to my brother's, and it was me, him, his wife, Laureen, and her daughter, Haley, and I think it was her boyfriend, and I forget his name. So it was the five of us. It was nice, good food and everything else. Just kind of hung out. I got there around 1. I was there till after 6. And so it was all good. And of course, the next morning I got up and then drove to DeBerry. So that's what's going on since you saw me the last time. So I hope everybody out there had a nice Thanksgiving, whether you were cooking or just eating. I was just eating, as you would expect. Although I did make some chicken wings today. They were pretty good. Cooked those up as I was doing some other things. So that's been some of the things going on. And so let's move on. I have some questions to answer. Got some good questions to answer this evening. So I'm going to start. Hello, Whitney. Good to see you. Whitney is in the house. Delane, who is in here, she gets her question answered first. She asked me, why did I move to Las Vegas? And then what caused me to then move to Florida? Here's what was going on in my life in 1997 into 1998. I moved to Las Vegas. I drove there, left on May 10th, 1998, got there. That was a Sunday morning. And I got there on a Tuesday evening. So that would be May 12th of 1998. And I lived there until September 29th, 29th of 2011. And I got here to Florida on October 1st, 2011. But why did I move? Here was what was going on in my life at the time. I was working for my family. My family had been in the car business for a long time. It was a dealership, a couple dealerships put together that were started by my grandfather, my mother's father. And that's where I started working after I got out of college. I graduated May of 1993, started working there in August or September of 1993. I was also running my own business at the time, and I was doing both. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I was not much of a car salesman, mainly for the fact that I really, for the most part, think that for most people buying new cars, it doesn't make any financial sense. So it's tough to be in that business if you think that way. But I was working for my uncle and my cousin, and we all got along just fine. But just wasn't a very good fit for me. And but I did that for 4.5 years. I was living at home. And it got to just like 97 into 98. And I don't think that my self-worth was the highest. And didn't like what I was doing. Didn't like where I was living. Didn't like a lot of things that were going on in my life and everything else. And what had happened was 2 years before that, in 1996, one of my best friends to this day, his name is Brad Carastori, who graduated 2 years before I did in high school. And his brother, Doug, who graduated with me. And really, Doug and I have really been close, just as close, if not closer, all those years. Still, if you'll remember, Doug, he went to Canada with myself and my dad and Doug's son last year, 2019. But Brad had moved to Las Vegas in 1996 for kind of the same reasons. He was just frustrated living, in our hometown. Well, I kept in contact with him, and he was then living there with his girlfriend, Andrea, who became his wife, and a friend that they had made when they all went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh back in the early 1990s. I think his name was John. And they were all three living together, but John met some girl and he was going to move in with her. So they were going to have a space open in their apartment in Las Vegas. And he told me about it and I said, I'll take it. And I remember telling my parents that I don't think they quite believed me when I told them. And I was dating a girl at the time. Her first name was Sue. And of course, she wasn't pleased either. And I said, I'm leaving. I'm just going. I just can't take it anymore. It wasn't her. It wasn't about her. It wasn't necessarily about my parents. This wasn't all about the work that I was doing, everything. It was just a combination of everything. And I said, I'm just out of here. And Las Vegas just seemed like the perfect place to go. The exact opposite of where I was living at the time. And so I moved out there. I just packed up. I owned a Dodge Ram Charger. And I just packed everything that I didn't have much at the time into that and moved to Las Vegas. No job or anything. I just had a place to stay. I didn't even have a bed. And I ended up living with them from May of 98 until about January of 99. And then I got my own place. The big problem once I got to Las Vegas, as I've told you all before, is I took the worst. I got hired at the worst job I've ever had, working for 7-Eleven. And so I really got started off on the wrong foot when I got there. And there was a time there where I started doubting myself about the choice that I made. And I actually, at one point, thought about moving back to Pennsylvania. But I didn't. And once I made the decision that no matter how bad things got, I was never moving back to Pennsylvania, ever. Suddenly everything got better. And then the rest of my time in Las Vegas was a great time working for the Cine Vegas Film Festival as an office manager, doing production assistant work, working at Star Trek, working in entertainment, all of it. So it really ended up being a good time after 7-Eleven. But then what Cherie says, I had a Ram Charger. I did. It was ugly. I don't know if I have a picture of it or not. If I find the picture, I guess I'll post it. I don't know if I have a picture of it or not. But it was a 1989 Ford Dodge Ram Charger, 4-wheel drive, stick, manual transmission. And it had this, it was like blue and silver, but the blue was one of those paint jobs that Chrysler had problems with at the time. It was like flaking off. That was my Dodge Ram Charger. Had no air conditioning, and I moved to Las Vegas in the summer. That was how desperate I was to get out of Pennsylvania. And I ended up so I lived, of course I got a company car at 7-Eleven, but after I gave it up, I was back to the Ram Charger, driving around Las Vegas, no air conditioning. I finally did get air conditioning installed in it sometime after I started working at Star Trek, and it was great. It was fantastic. But then it started to nickel and dime me, so I got rid of it. But yeah, I had a Dodge Ram Charger, Cherie. 4-wheel drive, stick, no air conditioning. That's what I moved into Las Vegas driving in. Roos said, COVID-19 sweeping through football teams. Ravens couldn't play the Thanksgiving Day game. Yeah, that's right. I know. Yeah. And they put up a good fight today, Ruth. They really did. Joy, hey, I have to get dinner soon, so I might not chat. That's okay, Joy. You can just listen. So that's why I moved to Las Vegas. And then the reason I moved to Florida And I want you to know that I like it here, and it certainly wasn't, uh, me moving to Florida from Nevada or from Las Vegas was certainly not the same situation as me moving from Pennsylvania to Las Vegas. Um, and I like it here. I live in a very nice place. It's beautiful here and everything else. But I do have to admit that probably at some point I will move back to Las Vegas. I don't know when that's going to be. But the reason I moved here is once again getting to 2011. Just once again, kind of found myself in a little bit of a rut there. Not nearly as bad as when I was in Pennsylvania. But, my brother lived here. At the time, my parents were coming down to the Panhandle. And for sometime from December to February, something like that. I knew that I could live near the beach, which didn't sound too bad after living in the desert for 13 years. And I thought I would try it out. And still, here I am over 9 years later. But I do, even though I play disc golf here and it offers a lot of opportunities here and everything else, the fact is I still have a lot of people who I'm very close to who live in Las Vegas. So that weighs on my mind. But in that situation, I had a lot more to move. So I had to get a U-Haul. I got a trailer to put my car on it, which at the time was a 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix GTP. It's a four-door, pretty sporty looking car. It was supercharged. And that's the car I had when I moved to Florida. And then not long after I got here, the transmission started going out on it. But it was a good car while it lasted. And so I drove here in that U-Haul, pulling that car, got here, moved to Madeira Beach, lived there from October 2011 until the end of April of 2019. And then I moved to where I live now. So that's kind of the update, Delane, to answer your question about why I moved to Las Vegas, why I moved to Florida. I do not. I should have moved to Las Vegas as soon as I graduated college. In retrospect, even if I didn't have any friends there, I should have just gone there and figured it out. Because I do that well. I figure things out very well. And then in retrospect, I don't mean to put Florida down. Obviously, everything that's going on here has been great. But in retrospect, probably I should have toughed Las Vegas out a little bit more and probably could have seen my way through some of the things that were going on at the time. But I didn't. So there's a little bit of a regret there. And that's why I say that probably one of these days, Young Unfound will be coming to you from Las Vegas instead of Florida. But I'm not sure when that's going to happen. So, Delane, I hope that answers your question. Fishing says, any update on the Chapman case in Dothan, Alabama, my area? Not fishing, not to my knowledge. I've not yet had a chance to talk to Wes yet, Rouse's father, simply because of the holidays, but it is on my list of things to do, to call him and do a follow-up like I do with all of the guests who have been on the program. So not at this time, fishing. Delane says, that's pretty interesting. Carla says, wait, definitely cold here in North Texas. I believe it, Carla. Delane, that's pretty interesting. I just wondered how you ended up in Vegas. My buddy Brad was there, and he ended up staying there until 2013. And now he lives back in our hometown of Leechburg, Pennsylvania. He moved back in 2013 because his father died. His mother was there by herself. And so he and his wife moved right down the street from her. And then she died the same year. Both of my mothers died in 2018. That was a bad year. So, but yeah, he's back. So we've done our Las Vegas stints. And he went back to where we all grew up. And I live here. I don't know if he ever plans to move again. But it is kind of in my plans one of these days. All right, let's get into the program and some true crime stuff, unfound stuff. Let's talk about the Caleb Powell poll. Of course, we do a poll every week on every disappearance that we covered, just to see what people were thinking. And that is in the discussion group. If you're not a member of the discussion group, you should be. And a majority of people have decided that Kevin Banta is most likely responsible for Caleb Powell's disappearance. It's one of those choices that's hard to argue with. When you put a combination of it is believed he's the last person who saw Caleb. We, of course, tried to contact the family. They can get back to us. The police, we're not sure the extent of the conversations they've had with Kevin or anybody else in the family. Of course, as Lori stated, she's not talked to Kevin at all since Caleb disappeared, and she only had a couple conversations with Caleb's girlfriend, who's Kevin's sister, a couple times before she stopped talking. And you should know, I mean, there was a little discrepancy during the interview about Kelly's name and how old she was. And we were finally able to, after that, I was able to determine that I was exactly right. That Kelly, who also goes by the last name Richmond, 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 is actually quite a bit older than Caleb is. He would be 30 now. I think that she would be 41. So she definitely was quite a bit older, and which means she's also quite a bit older than her brother Kevin. But in the think tank, my impression is that things were a little bit more vague about who is responsible and not quite as clear cut as it was made in the discussion group. I think people in the think tank were still a little more open-minded. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but there's still a lot more questions in their mind. It's hard to put their finger on one choice or another. I think a lot of what factors into that is, Caleb does have this criminal background that was a hate crime that it seems a lot of listeners found somewhat distressing. And so it's that. And could it be that there was some revenge factor there by somebody? Could it be that there was something else going on in Caleb's life that he didn't want to deal with and he just walked off? Of course, we talked about Kevin possibly being responsible, or at least knowing what happened, maybe not being directly responsible for it, but at least knowing and just keeping his mouth shut for some reason. Caleb being asked to torch this trailer for insurance money, that factored into the discussion. So, not sure we came to an absolute consensus in the think tank on Sunday night. And if you'd like to be a part of the think tank, of course, it's patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You have to sign up as a premium member, $12 a month or above. And those discussions take place every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. But I do have to say that it was the guest herself that probably created the most controversy in the episode. Probably one of the more controversial guests I think that we've had on the program, as far as how you, the listeners, responded to her. It was a combination of things. First of all, her not knowing exactly what Caleb did to get himself put in jail. She knew it was a hate crime, but she did not know the circumstances. She said she didn't want to know. Her not going to see her son in jail while he was there for 5 years. A lot of people found that suspicious as well. And then just some of the facts about the disappearance that to this day, 6 years later, she doesn't know that you would think she should know. And that's the way she's been since day one. As I said, I've been talking to her with long spans in between since March. And I was glad that we could finally get together and have her on the program. But that is the way she's been since the beginning. So I don't want you to think that she was just saying those things because she was embarrassed by them and just didn't want to admit what her son did or anything like that. When she says she doesn't know, I believe that. And I know that gets a lot of criticism, but I think, on the other hand, that it's very honorable and very, very brave of her to agree to do a public interview where everybody can hear it and her admit that, yes, there's still things that she doesn't know. And I think that these are points that I think she realizes that other parents, other mothers, other fathers would treat those circumstances different than she did. But, she didn't lie just to make herself look like everybody else. She was just very honest about it. And, the truth is, regarding her not knowing about her son's crime, not going to see him in jail, have nothing to do with his disappearance. And, people were distressed by that part of it, but that's not really, we cover those things because in an effort to get to know Caleb, to get to know the relationship that he and his mother had, the relationship that Caleb had with other people and everything else. Okay. Because getting to know the missing person can obviously help in understanding maybe why the disappearance happened. I don't think anybody denies that. Well, these just happen to be the facts for this particular disappearance. And I'm sorry, for some of you, if you're distressed by, some of Lori's actions and how she treated what her son did. Ultimately, the big point is nobody believes that Lori had anything to do with her son's disappearance. I believe she wants to figure out what happened. And I think that although people may see her as being different than many other guests, I'm not sure I do. I think that she has fallen into the trap that many families do in just believing, well, just leave it to the police and they'll do whatever. And that's that. And I think she got caught up in the trap, and it's not necessarily her fault. And it doesn't help that Caleb's father seemingly doesn't want to have anything to do with it, didn't even want to file a police report, automatically defaulted, well, I don't want to file one in case the kid's in trouble. The grandmother goes along with it. And not to mention that some of the details are still hazy to the point that I know that there are listeners out there who may not even believe what her son Daniel told her. That, yeah, he was over there and his father said that Caleb and Kevin were there and they were left. Well, this is coming from the same guy who didn't want to file a police report. So, but Lori certainly with her comments and answers generated some controversy, but I think if that's where you're going with this, I think you're going in the totally wrong direction with this. Instead of so many people are concerned about what she didn't know, maybe people should be more concerned about the people who are around Kevin that day, the father, the Bantas, etc., and they seemingly haven't made anything public. How about that? So that's my attitude toward it. I like Lori a lot. I'm going to continue to help her no matter whether some people liked her answers or not, whether they thought she was a good parent or not. She's going to still get my full support, and we'll see what we can do to get some of those, fill in some of those blanks that probably should be answered after 6 years after a disappearance. So that was the disappearance of Caleb Powell. As I stated, make sure if you're looking at anything up about him that you get the right Caleb Powell. There's a Caleb Joseph Powell, which is, of course, the young man that we covered. I think there's a Caleb Andrew Powell who disappeared in California like last year. Wrong guy. Wrong middle name. Totally different state. So that's the disappearance of Caleb Powell. I thank everybody who answered the poll and everybody who listened to the episode. If you haven't yet, hopefully you'll get to it when you have time. Let's move on to this. Unfound Now. Whew, some of those burp from the chicken wings. As I stated last Wednesday during this show, that I was going to make an attempt while I was in DeBary, Florida, to do an Unfound Now, and I luckily got it done. Did it on location. Tried to do it with the best lighting that I could in the hotel room that I had. I thought it came out all right. I thought the audio was okay. Did not have this microphone. Did not have the lights that I usually use to, brighten me up a little bit. But I thought it came out very good. Had to type out quite a few notes to do that one. But yes, Alan White, who disappeared from Dallas, Texas, back in October of this year. Just like I said, not a recent disappearance, but within like the last 6 weeks. And it is a stumper. I'm guessing that if it continues to go unsolved, I'm still thinking that we'll know more about this disappearance, let's say a year from now, than we do right now. That's usually the way it works out. But I thought the main, of course, I brought up a couple different main points and principles that I think we can look at this disappearance and kind of apply those principles to it. But I think the main one is that, gender and sexuality matters. I think that we think so often, as in being that most of the disappearances that we cover on Unfound are just single people disappearing. Caleb Powell, Robin Abrams, Jesse Foster, Chris Sanders. And then we've had, of course, covered some disappearances of couples, Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, for example, to name one. And then we covered those three young men from Canada who disappeared down here in Florida on the scuba diving trip, if we believe they actually went scuba diving. But we tend to, we haven't really covered a disappearance where a gay marriage or gay relationship, homosexual relationship played that great of a factor, and could be something that we looked at and really analyzed. And does that figure into the disappearance and how we look at it? And I think it certainly does in Alan White's, because as I stated during the Unfound Now, if Alan and Rusty weren't gay, and let's say that Rusty was still a guy, but Alan was a woman, and they were married, and Alan, let's just call her Alexis, went to the gym and then left the gym and looked like she was on her way home. And then the husband is claiming, nope, she never got home. I don't know. Even though there's video of the car being within a mile or headed that direction. And then the car is found, several miles away in some bad part of town. We all know what we would think. We would think that Alexis got home and Rusty did something to her. And then, is attempting to cover it up. Would all be thinking that. I don't know if would be right, but that certainly would pop into our head, certainly if there weren't any facts to dispute that. But because Rusty and Alan are gay, we look at it a different way because both of these men, into their 50s and 60s, and it's hard to imagine a situation where some guy in his late 50s gets home. These two have a disagreement, something happens. And then Rusty, who is not a youngster, puts Alan over his shoulders and drags him to the vehicle and then gets rid of him and parks. It's just hard for us to imagine. It's much easier for us to imagine a grown man killing a grown woman and then carrying her because she's smaller, lighter, and getting rid of her. Much easier than we can believe that an older man getting rid of an older woman. Now, if Alan and Rusty were 30, two 30-year-olds that were married, gay men married, and maybe then we might be more open to that. But I think that their sexuality and their gender play a factor in this disappearance. And I think that's the reason that Rusty just is not considered and looking around, web sleuths, people, offering up opinions out there on the internet about this disappearance, not too many people are pointing the finger at Rusty, but we know that they would be if Alan was a woman. So it's very interesting to me. I think it's something that we have to keep in mind. I think I raised some good points in there, just looking at the facts of the times and um, everything that could lead me to believe that maybe Alan was seeing some other person, that he was planning to see some other person. That's why he was only in the gym for as long as he was. There's stories out there that he was actually on his phone, either at the gym or at the racetrack. Well, who would he be talking on the phone at 5:30 in the morning? Obviously, it wasn't Rusty, because Rusty hasn't brought it up. So, who was he talking to that early in the morning? So, just don't know. Hopefully we'll know something very soon. I hope that, of course, Alan is found alive and well. But, of course, we know the longer this goes, the less likely that is to happen. And so I think this is a very important disappearance. Like I said, I hope Alan is found alive and well very soon, if not tonight, tomorrow at the latest. But this is one that's good to analyze, to teach us more about disappearances and how to look at them. Because, as I've stated, a lot of these disappearances are not going to be solved. And we know that a lot of these disappearances are going to be solved, but the missing person is going to be deceased. And so we have to figure out a way to make the best of these situations. No different than when a plane crashes and many people get killed. They go in, investigate, why did the plane crash? Well, the pilot error, there's a mechanical fault, something, and then we can't bring those people back, but maybe we can learn something from that crash to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so that's what I'm trying to do with these Unfound Nows, by looking at these recent disappearances and seeing what we can learn from them, what I can learn from them, what you can learn from them, maybe what I can teach you about them, and make the public more intelligent about these. And I think that's the way more disappearances are going to get solved, and hopefully less disappearances are going to happen. That's why we do Unfound Now. All right, let me answer another question. This was from a listener. Unfortunately, I could not find the listener's name, but I said I was going to answer this last week. But I forgot, but I remembered, and then I couldn't find the email or the message that she sent me. And I've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it again. Oh, Kathy, what'd you want here? Very tight timeline in this disappearance, since Alan had a conference call. Very tight, Kathy. Very tight. I agree. He's at that gas station. He was done there at 6:01. I'm going to guess that it was going to be some video conference, so he had to get home, take a shower, shave, comb his hair, whatever, how he's going to look for this conference. So he had plenty of time to do that. Somehow between the racetrack and home, something happened. You're right. So, not to mention that Rusty, claims that, when Alan wasn't home by like 6:15 in the morning, that's when he got home. I think he was expecting Alan to be there. He wasn't. He knew that Alan had this meeting at 7 a.m. And so he starts calling Alan, and all of a sudden, of course, he's not picking up. And then, so we know sometime between 6:01 and before 6:30, something went on. Something. And that Rusty claimed that he went out to look for him, driving, think he was in a car wreck, going back the route he would have taken. I mean, certainly none of those things exclude Rusty from being the culprit in this disappearance. But my thinking is that if he actually did something and with this very tight timeline and everything, I think they would have figured this out by now. I think this is very different than, for example, Angela Green's disappearance, Marion Hurley's disappearance, where it took a while for people to figure these things out, and there were obvious lies that were being created. It's not obvious to me that Rusty Allen's husband right now has told any lies. From Clearwater Beach, Florida, looking at what happened here in Texas, I can't tell that he's telling any lies. Whereas I think it was very obvious early on, even to the public, with Angela Green's disappearance, Marion Hurley's, that their husbands were not telling the truth. So you can, kind of compare and contrast all of that. So this listener asked me, what about disappearances in national parks? Now we know where this question comes from, because there is a guy, I'm not going to mention his name, who has said quite a bit about disappearances in national parks, and he has put the idea out there that there's some sort of serial killers, etc., that are feasting on people in national parks. I don't know if he's ever offered up any proof of that. All he has are these statistics saying that look at all these people who disappear in our national parks. And he's done, I don't know if he's appeared on a lot of different programs, radio programs, etc. With these stats. The problem is that stats alone aren't enough to determine anything. Facts are great. We cover them on the program, but we know that facts are up to interpretation. And just like I said, Alan is the husband of Rusty. He goes missing. But knowing what we know about that, it surely is not the same as Angela Green being married to Jeff and her going missing. Even though it's both spouses going missing and they're in these long relationships and everything, well, that doesn't really tell the entire story. You have to look, even though they're similar, you still have to get into those very, very minute details about each of their relationships, timelines, cell phone information, everything else, what the other spouse did after the disappearance, and did his or her story remains straight, and everything else. So we have to remember that stats alone, even if you were to show me, well, do you know that more missing people disappear per square mile in a national park than they do in the rest of the United States? That may be true. I still don't know what that means. I'm still not sure that means anything. It's just a statistic. The other concern I have is that it's always easy to default to the most suspicious theory. It's very easy to, if you don't really know what's going on because you really haven't studied it, to just go to, oh yeah, I think there's a bunch of killers in those. Of course, how many serial killers have actually been caught in national parks? How many killers have actually been caught who have committed crimes in national parks? This is the same thing I say about the smiley face killer, that people put that theory forward. Lot of theories out there, no facts to back it up. Just a bunch of guys who, and I guess a couple girls who died while they were in bodies of water after being out at bars. Well, I don't know why anybody's surprised that drunk people fall into rivers and drowned. I don't know why that's surprising to anybody. Given how many young people drink and get drunk, like crazy drunk, it's a miracle there aren't more young people who don't end up in rivers and lakes and ponds and drowned. That's the way I look at it. Of course, I'm a non-drinker. Easy for me to talk. But I was, an early 20-something at one time, and going down to the University of Pittsburgh campus and going to the O and going to Zelda's and all those places and seeing people get totally trashed. So it doesn't surprise me then that some of these people stumble away from these areas and then somehow end up stumbling into a lake or a pond and drown, because drunk people don't swim very well. That's the way I look at it. And it's weird to me that people who default to conspiracy theories kind of just leave that totally out of it. Oh, no, it couldn't be that they're drunk. It couldn't be that, young people doing stupid stuff all the time. It couldn't be that drunk people can't swim. It couldn't be that, it's winter and they fall into the water and they suffer hypothermia within minutes. No, it couldn't be all that. No, they had to have been murdered. When that happens, I start to think that people have an agenda. Some of these people being killed and murdered, because murders happen. But to say that they all were part of some conspiracy theory, once again, going back to the smiley face killer thing, to say that they all happened that way, it starts to feel like I'm, it sounds to me like when you watch, TV at 2 a.m. and somebody wants to sell you a brand new set of steak knives. That's what it feels like. So when it comes back to national parks, I still don't know what that means. Just because there's more people, once again, per square mile who disappear in national parks than in the urbanized area of the United States. Well, you know what? More people die in the ocean than die in the desert, too. That's a statistic, too. And you may say, well, nobody dies in exactly. You know why nobody dies in the desert? Because there's no water there. You know what? People rarely die, they could if they're out there long enough. They don't die of dehydration on the water because most of them end up being found, or they die. Whereas you can die of dehydration in the desert if you get lost out there. What I'm trying to say is you have to look at the national parks in the United States and analyze why they're national parks. You know why they're national parks? Because they're some of the most beautiful parts of the United States. What makes them beautiful also makes them dangerous. We know that you're not allowed to, I don't think you're allowed to hunt in national parks. So you have a lot of wild animals. Of course, you have the Grand Canyon and all these other places that it's very easy to get lost and go hiking. And people who've never been to these areas before, they go to Urban Outfitters or, Cabela's or something. They get brand new hiking shoes and a brand new lantern and a brand new tent and everything. And they think that they're ready to take on the wilderness. That people who analyze these disappearances never bring that stuff up and just say, oh yeah, these people were murdered, once again, makes me suspicious. Instead, they try to say that all of these or most of these people were murdered, ignoring the fact that people were doing stupid stuff all the time. People are getting in over their heads all the time. And a lot of times they don't survive. Whether it has to be with people out in the roadways, young people getting a motorcycle for the first time and going down there 150 miles an hour through traffic and get killed. I see it no differently than people who go into these national parks and then end up going missing. So, everybody has an angle. Everybody has a pitch. Everybody's looking for their own niche. Everybody has something to sell. And that's my attitude toward it. My attitude is the reason that all these people, for the most part, go missing in national parks is you have a bunch of humans going into those national parks who don't know what the heck they're doing. How do I know that? Because I see that happening every day all over the place. That's how I know. So, in addition to the fact that, we're catching killers and people all the time. I just wonder how the smiley face killers and these people in the national parks continue to get away with it over and over and over and nothing. So there you go. That's my answer. Unfortunately, I can't remember did not write down and could not find the actual listener's name, but hopefully she will see this, watch it and understand. Jill says, y'all need qualitative with your quantitative. Quinkle, I think most people who go missing in parks just had accidents. That's the point I'm trying to make, Tinkle. Thank you. Sheree, think about how many people hike the Appalachian and very, very, very seldom does someone go missing. Yeah, if there's all these killers out there, how are they missing all these people who are out there by themselves? Why? Maybe because these people aren't being murdered. Maybe the people who are getting through these national parks and surviving are the people who go out there and don't do anything stupid. And the people who go in there and do disappear, they might have been doing something they shouldn't, trying to get that, for their Instagram account. Man, I got to get that huge mountain in the background. I got to get close to this cliff. Here I go. And then they fall off. So, Kathy says, Sheree, I believe Martin Roberts passed away near the Appalachian Trail. He went missing in April 2016. Twinkle. Well, Bigfoot is out there, so who knows? Yeah, Bigfoot. Okay, I've seen Bigfoot on old $6 Million Man episodes, Twinkle. Ruth, Appalachian Trail had a serial killer killing hiker peoples have gone missing. Well, how many years? I realized that at one point there was one person, it seems, working the Appalachian Trail or the Colonial Park Highway a long time ago. But the only reason they knew that these people were murdered because they were in the car and there was blood and everything else. That's fairly obvious. How much is that happening? If it's in the news, I'm not seeing it. So I'm not saying we know people do get away with murders, but to automatically dismiss a disappearance in a national park as being a murder is just, it's not very insightful. It's not very intuitive. It's just a comment. Charlotte, there's so many natural dangers in the national parks. There are. If there is a statistic showing that more people go missing in the national parks than in our urban areas, the reason would be is because people are used to being in cities. They know how those things work. They know the areas to stay away from. They know the hours not to go out. They're in their cars. The doors are locked. They may, if you could do that in your state, carry a gun on you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're used to being around other people, around cement and iron and steel and pavement and everything else. We're used to that. Most people are not used to being out in the wilderness where there's no electricity and there's no Wi-Fi. And you may have your GPS on your phone or something, but there's no cell phone towers that your phone can ping off either. You might be able to GPS it from a satellite, but as far as talking and everything, good luck. So most of us are not used to that. And that's how people get in trouble. Ruth, most of the ones who go missing in the Colorado Mountains, usually they find the bodies and they died from accidents. Exactly, Ruth. Thank you. So unfortunately, I did not once again write down the woman's name, but I hope that answers her question. I realize that, the person in particular that I'm thinking of, but I know that there are others out there who, think the same way. I just don't agree with them at all. At all. I don't think they have any stats at all to tell anybody that a bunch of people are being killed in our national parks, except for the fact that people go missing in national parks. Well, missing persons cases are my domain, not theirs. And I can tell you, people go missing for all sorts of different reasons, as we've covered on the program. All right. The newsletter. Did you get it? It came out yesterday. I felt very fortunate just to get it done. I got it on time. Being that I was in DeBerry and had to write the blog while I was over there. The Patreon blog did not get out to Monday. And then when I do the newsletter, I always want to make it, like 4,000 words or something. I don't want to just turn out 1,000 words and say, there you go. So I had to crank out, I think the Patreon blog ended up being like 3,200 words written between Friday and Monday. And then on Monday, I started the newsletter. I wrote 2,000 words that day and then 2,000 words the next day. So I do a lot of writing for a program that's primarily audio. It's really weird. But I got it out on time. I hope you got it. If you did not get it, maybe you're not on the list. If you're not on the list, please contact me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And if you think you are on the list and didn't get it, you might want to check your spam folder. Jill says she got it. Great. Twinkle says, yes, that newsletter was full of information. That's what I try to do, Twinkle. That's what I try to do. Katie, Kathy, I always appreciate all the work. I love doing those newsletters, Kathy. I love the writing. I have to admit, I do love the writing portion of this doing Unfound because it keeps my writing sharp. I think many of you know that I have written some novels over the years. I do have an editor, although I've not talked to her recently. I had a professional editor that I worked with kind of between 2011 and 2015 on some books that I wrote. And, I take the writing very seriously, although I will say that when it comes to writing novels, that I try to get the word usage and everything a little more correct than I do for the newsletters. Newsletters, I'm just making sure I don't leave out any words and I spell everything correctly. So there might be a lot of passive verbs in there and everything, but the most part is that I'm getting my ideas across and giving you information that is clear, talking about whatever topic it is that you understand it. Whereas when it comes to writing novels, it's more about the emotional response. And so it's a different kind of writing. But writing the blogs, writing the newsletters, I'd like to think, still keeps my writing skills, keeps the muscles, both the finger muscles and the mind muscles loose. So the next one, of course, will come out New Year's Day, of course, January 1st, 2021. Okay, well, we got something to talk about here. Katie says, am I correct that you were a business major? I was, Katie. You seem very creative for a business guy. I tend to be very creative, Katie. I'm a musician, although I've not played the piano and the guitar for a while. I started playing the piano when I was 5 years old. My mother was a piano teacher, had no choice. And I was in drama club in high school. As all of you know, I was at Star Trek: The Experience. In college, I was a business major, but that's because I almost flunked out of being an engineering major. And had I gone to a larger school, let's just say the Pitt University of Pittsburgh, then I probably would have a lot more of choices of a major that I could have transferred to. But being that I went to a small private school called Grove City, my choices were limited. So that's what I ended up doing. I did not like school. I did not like going there. I met some decent people there that I'm still friends with, but for the most part, I did not like my college experience. I could not wait to get the heck out of there. But I think I am creative. I love to sit down and create stories and put the plots together and everything else. And the other nice thing is I type very fast. So I have no problems writing 3,000 words a day. So I can crank out things pretty fast. So I guess I am creative. I don't know how much I've ever gotten out of it, but it's fun to be creative sometimes. Absolutely. And I say this term in the nicest way possible. Yes, I am kind of artsy fartsy. So as some of you have seen, I've posted a lot of information regarding the disappearance of Stephen Kocher in the group on the page, and now all of it is at theunfoundpodcast.com. How this all happened, I can't go into some of the specifics because this person wishes to remain anonymous. But I reestablished contact with somebody who I used to talk to about Stephen's disappearance years ago, well before Unfound got started. And he alerted me to the fact that he had all this paperwork and things that he had collected over the years. And I said, well, I would certainly like to see that. And so he sent it to me, and that's what you've seen. My opinion is that you should just go to theunfoundpodcast.com, the website, and you can get all the downloads there. I understand that I've posted things on the page in the group, but they may be a little harder to read, maybe not as organized. And if you download the PDF files on the website, I think it might be in a better order of understanding everything, in contrast to, because one of those files, the Henderson Police Department's file, is so big, I can't post it as a file in the group. It's that large. So what I did was I converted it from a PDF to a JPEG, which is a picture file. And then I posted it. Well, it's 160 some different pictures. And of course, if you don't look at the pictures in the right way, you may be going from page 2 to page 27, then back to page 13, and then to page 78. And of course, that's just going to exasperate you. Whereas if you just download the PDF and view it on your computer or your phone, it'll automatically be in the right order going from page 1 to page 160. So I just want to point out some of the highlights from each of these documents. What they are is I got the Henderson reports that have been filed regarding anything having to do with Stephen's disappearance, including phone information that are in there. That file, like I said, is over 160 pages long. I also got the St. George, Utah police report, which is, of course, where Stephen was living at the time. And that's not as large. And I have to admit, probably it doesn't expose as much as the Henderson police report does. I think that makes sense. But then today, or did he send that to me last night? He sent me the report regarding Stephen Kocher's Landlord. And if you will remember regarding Stephen's disappearance, is that there is a belief out there, a theory that I could subscribe to, that the landlord might have had something to do with Stephen's disappearance. And after Stephen disappeared, the landlord's name that I can now say, his name is Brett Bishop, Bishop. He has gone to jail for crimes committed, and I think he's still in jail. But what I got wrong, and I'm going to start this discussion with this. I'm going to start with the stolen vehicle report. Here is something that I got wrong. And yes, I can admit when I'm wrong. I was under the impression that this whole stolen vehicle story connected to Steve's landlord got started after Stephen went missing. That is wrong. In fact, this stolen vehicle issue got started before Stephen went missing. In fact, 4 months before. And I've posted in the group how it all got started, once again, from the police report that was filed in St. George, Utah. Just in general, here's how it went down. And once again, I urge you to go to theunfoundpodcast.com, download the PDF file for yourself, and you read it. I'm just going to give you the general outline. What had happened was, it turns out that Brett Bishop had a nosy neighbor. And the neighbor was suspicious because he or she would see, I'm just going to call him he, would see when when his garage door would be up, this neighbor would see that there's a Porsche Cayenne Turbo in there. Porsche SUV, of course, very high-end SUV. And sometimes it had a license plate on it. Sometimes it didn't. But it just didn't seem that for a guy who owned a Porsche that he took it out very much. And the neighbor was suspicious of this. You know, it's probably the kind of neighbor that none of us likes. But what happened was this neighbor went to police and said, you know what? And maybe this neighbor already knew that Brett Bishop was a little shady and said, you know, I think there's something going on here. I'm not sure. He has this, you know, it has a license plate that it doesn't. And, you know, and just, there's just something about it that seems weird. And for some reason, and there's more to it, but the police decided to look into it. Of course, that's not enough to get a warrant or anything, but what happened was the police ended up going by there at least once and seeing the vehicle in there, and they determined that it was gray or silver in color, and it was what year it was. And being that sometimes it had an Arizona plate on it, and this was happening in August of 2009, 4 months before Stephen went missing, they started to look, well, maybe if we do a search of missing Porsche Cayennes in Arizona, something will pop up. And lo and behold, they found that there were two still missing from that state. Only two. I was surprised it was only two. And one of them was silver. And they put some other information together and got enough information that a judge issued a warrant to them go on the property and check this out. And the day they decided to do it, they, of course, went up, knocked on the door. Well, Brett Bishop wasn't there, but they decided to execute the warrant anyway because there were neighbors who were seeing what they were doing, and they were afraid that Brett Bishop, might get called and might go on the run or something. So they just said, you know what? We're just going to go in right now and check this out. They go in there, and the Porsche's there. They find multiple different license plates from multiple states. And they went and looked at the VIN, which, if you don't know, the first VIN that everybody can see is the one that's right by the driver's side, right down there in the corner of the windshield. Well, they looked at that, and it was a different VIN. It did not match the VIN of the SUV that was stolen in Arizona. So they were like, huh. Well, I guess one of the police officers must have had some stolen vehicle experience, got like a knife out, went in there, and he turned out that the VIN that they saw was fake. The fake VIN had been taped over the real one. And when they peeled that one away, it was the Porsche that had been stolen from Arizona, from a dealership in Arizona earlier that year. And so that was, of course, enough to get Brett in trouble. And this was in August of 2009. This would have been when Stephen, right around the time that Stephen started living there, had already been living there, renting from Brett. And while they were there, they also found a multitude of guns. They found some marijuana, and they found a lot of prescription drugs that did not have Brett's name or anybody's his family's name on them. And so they finally reached Brett. He was out of town, said he would turn himself in. He's not going to go on the run. And he eventually did with his lawyer. And it turned out, even though he was a convicted felon in the past, enough time had passed that he was allowed to own the guns. We know that if you're a convicted felon, owning a gun is not legal until a certain amount of time passes. Well, that amount of time had passed, so he didn't get in trouble for any of the guns. But of course, he did get in trouble for the vehicle. He had some story about how somebody just randomly gave him that vehicle, and the guy's name was TJ, and he's from Tennessee. And obviously, the police did not believe that. But of course, he got in trouble with the marijuana. But it seems that the prescription drug thing was the big deal. And because, as has been mentioned before, that I think the reason people knew that this landlord was in jail was for the stolen vehicle, but also for this prescription drug thing. Well, in that report, if you look at it, once again, it's posted at theunfoundpodcast.com. It turns out that Brett had been working for a pharmacy online or something like that, where his job was to deliver prescriptions to people. And it seems that Brett put on a pretty good show. That the people who had worked with him in past and other businesses had nothing bad to say about him, but he started working for this prescription drug place, and it turned out eventually they figured out that he was ripping them off. And they figured that out a couple of different ways, but it certainly helped that these police officers found all these prescription drugs with other people's names on them in his place. And so he'd been ripping off different people and working the system to his benefit, surely skimming, I guess, and I'm guessing selling these prescription drugs to other people, for cash. So this all started, though, before Stephen went missing, not after. This started in August of 2009. Stephen went missing in December of 2009. So you may need to factor that into your theory about Stephen's disappearance, because after I answer a question from a listener, I'm going to go in. So that's the first part of it about what went on in St. George. Hello, Jody. So that's the first part regarding that report. Once again, go to theunfoundpodcast.com, read it for yourself. Let me answer a question, and then I will move on to the Henderson part of this that could take us in a different direction. Paula asked me, what is my favorite Christmas tradition? Do I have one? Paula, I don't know if you're in here or not. I really don't know if I have one, Paula, really because for so many Christmases, I've just been by myself. And I don't want to, oh, poor Ed. It's fine. When I lived in Las Vegas, because I was a single guy and didn't have a family in Las Vegas, I usually worked on holidays. Families would want to, of course, co-workers with children would want to get, for example, Christmas off. I had no problem working Christmas at all. And so I worked many Thanksgivings, Christmases, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, 4th of July, whatever. I really didn't care. So doing that for so many years, and a lot of people in entertainment do that, it's hard to develop. Hello, Dorothy. It's hard to develop really some Christmas traditions. Now, if you were to go back to my days before I lived in Las Vegas, when I was around my family, how do I put this nicely? I have to tell you that, the holidays were not the holidays were a little boring to me because, as you know, I was raised as an only child. I didn't meet my brothers and my sister until I was, April of 1994. I was 23 years old. And even then, they did not live close to me, or my sister kind of did, but not really. And of course, they had their own things to do. They had their own families. And I can remember our first Christmas together, which was really cool, at my sister's old house in Canfield, Ohio. Both of my brothers were there, and I had a really good time playing Scrabble and everything. It was a really good time on that Christmas of 94. But for the most part, though, I celebrated, Christmas with my family, and being an only child, there wasn't anybody else my age. It'd be my parents. It'd be usually the parents, my mother's parents, my grandpa Frank, my grandma Eva. It would be my mother's brother, my Uncle Ron and Aunt Sil. And they had 2 kids, but Ronnie and Pam, they're quite a bit older than I am. Ronnie is 15 years older. Pam is 12 years older, I think. And, or maybe 11 years older. And of course, they are, going to be starting their families. They got married both in 1986. And so I really never had anybody to hang out with, at family get-togethers. And so I did it. Of course, I'm in the family and everything, but I would not say that Thanksgivings and Christmases growing up were, whiz-bang affairs. So when I went to Las Vegas, working on those particular holidays was really no big deal. It was actually a step in the right direction. At least I was kind of around my friends who were my coworkers, having a good time and everything. It was just a little more exciting for me to work on those holidays and Christmas than growing up with my family. And that's not to offend them or anything, but I'm just looking at it from a kid's point of view. Whereas all my friends, they had brothers and sisters, and they're getting presents and getting to hang out with, and kind of just grew up by myself. So because of that, I think I don't have any Christmas traditions, Paula. I just don't. Nothing that really sticks out. So don't feel sorry for me. It's totally fine. That's just kind of how the way things go. And that's why, of course, being that I get to see my brother and my sister-in-law, Laureen, for these times, it's really cool. And it's great. It's great. Love it. But really, I'm just used to spending these holidays by myself, or, working or something. And I'm really fine with that. Really fine with that. So I just, did not really have a chance to develop those kinds of traditions, Paula, just for a few different reasons. So there you go. Twinkle. My daughter's an only child and she did not enjoy it when she was a child. Being an only child has a lot of benefits. I guess you can get spoiled. I wouldn't say that I was spoiled, but I certainly was given a lot of stuff and didn't have to share with anybody. And, I never had to think that some other sibling was getting more than I was and everything else. But being an only child, going back to being creative, you better have a very imaginative mind on, for amusing yourself, and creating stories in your head and everything. Because if you can't do that, then your childhood's probably going to be kind of tough. But I was very fortunate, with my parents when we would go on vacations. For example, when we would go to Canada fishing back in the 80s, they always invited one of my friends to go, either this guy, Jerry, I'm not going to say his last name, Jerry, who went a couple years with me. And then later, my buddy Doug, best friend Doug, who, we went in high school and would all go together. And then, and it's the same Doug who, we went to Canada last year, kind of rekindling that. So that I really appreciated my family and my parents doing that, because I think they kind of knew, and they liked all my friends anyway. So that was fine too. So when I look back at my childhood, I don't think about the Christmases and New Year's and Thanksgivings and everything. I think about those trips that we went on where a friend of mine was there and we all went together and had a great time. Those are the things that come back. All right. Let's get to the Henderson report, Henderson Police Department report regarding Stephen Kocher's disappearance. I'm going to just point out some things that caught my eye. Once again, it's over 160 pages. You can download the entire PDF file at theunfoundpodcast.com right there on the first page. What I thought was noteworthy, first of all, this is in this report. You have to see it for yourself. On either December 1st or December 2nd, so roughly 10 days before Stephen went missing in the Henderson area, what we would call the Anthem area of Henderson. And Anthem does, in certain areas, have its own private security. And sometime in January of 2010, so roughly a month after Stephen went missing, one of these security people came forward to say that on either December 1st or December 2nd, so once again, roughly 10 days before Stephen went missing, this security guard could have sworn that he saw Stephen's car parked in the same place that it was eventually found. And that there wasn't any reports. Nobody had called it in or complaining, but he was doing his rounds. He saw this car there, and it looked like the inside of it, had been steamed or something. You sit, it's a cold night, you sit in the car, the windows fogged up. The windows were fogged up. And I think what this private security guard thought is maybe, a couple teenagers, something making out or something, and just kept going. But a month later, this private security guy said, you know what? I'm pretty sure that earlier that month, before Stephen disappeared, he could have sworn he saw Stephen's car parked in the exact same place where it was eventually found. Now, this catches my eye because I have made the statement for a long time now that my belief was that Stephen had been to that neighborhood before. And I never knew about this story. Honest to God, never heard it before until I read this report today. And this might back that up. Because my reasoning has always been, how did he end up on that street? If he was going to meet somebody, where are the directions? There's no signs that anybody in that area ever texted him before to give him directions. He did not have a phone that had GPS on it. He did not have a GPS in his car. Nothing. So if he was meeting somebody on that street, how did he get there? No maps, nothing. Old school maps, before GPS, going back to the 90s and 80s. Nothing like that in the car. How did he get there if he was meeting somebody there? Nobody's been able to ever answer that question. And I eventually came to the conclusion that I think he made it there because he had been there before. And then I read this in the report that this security guard thought he saw Stephen's car like 10 days at that same parking spot, 10 days before Stephen disappeared. Interesting. So that's in the Henderson report. You can read it for yourself. I forget what page it's on, but it's in there. The next thing that caught my eye was after Stephen went missing, the police showed up, started talking to all of the people in the neighborhood, going door to door. And we all know they did that. Well, it was one of the neighbors who claimed that on the day of Stephen's disappearance, that the neighbor across the street had a U-Haul out there, and they were bringing boxes out, what she says, very quickly. It took them like 3 hours. They were moving all these things out into this U-Haul and then left. And this name, probably to people who really, really, really know this disappearance, this name, the last name of this neighbor, is not going to surprise you. It is the DiMaggios, just like Joe DiMaggio used to play for the Yankees. It is the DiMaggios. Now, their last name has popped up before. I've never seen it mentioned in this context, but I've seen their names mentioned before in Web Sleuths and other places. Why? Because where they moved to, they did move from that street that Stephen was walking on. They moved down to the area where Stephen's phone last pinged. That's what has caught everybody's eye, because many people have, now I haven't done this, but I know people have gone through and looked at the names of all the people who lived on that street and see if anybody had moved since. You can do that. There are databases online that you can do that. And the DiMaggios just happened to have moved from the Evening Light Street, once again, down to an area where Stephen's phone ended up pinging on the day he disappeared, and that caught a lot of people's attention. So these are the DiMaggios that happened to be moving out of where this neighbor is to be believed at the same day that Stephen was there. Now, I don't know if it shows videotape of the U-Haul truck pulling away or anything else. That is not in the report that I saw. Well, when the neighbor told the police this, they decided, okay, well, I guess we'll just have to talk to the DiMaggios and see if they saw anything that they were moving. The DiMaggios were not easy to find. The police would show up. They would put their card on the door. Call us. They wouldn't call them. The police would go back to the DiMaggios, and the card would be missing. So obviously somebody was there, had seen the card, and they decided not to call the police back. And if you read the report, it took several times before the police could track the DiMaggios down. And they finally talked to Mr. DiMaggio, who now is like 80 years old. At the time, I guess he would have been 70. And he claimed, nope, I have no idea who Stephen is. Nope, nothing. But in the report, it never did give a reason as to why it was. He never gave a reason of why he didn't get back to them more quickly than he did. The way you read the entire report, it seems this is the only family or people who were hard to contact on that entire street. Everybody else, it seems they contacted no problem. It was just these particular people who were very hard to contact. Well, the DiMaggios have a son, and his name is Mark. And the police eventually did get to talk to him, and he sounds like one weird cat. Once again, you read the report, you determine it for yourself. And the son admitted that he was living in the casita at his parents' house. At the time, he was shown a picture of Stephen, said he didn't know him, nothing. But this in the report, you will see that the police wrote down that Mark was very nervous. He was very nervous when talking about Stephen, but when he would talk about anything else, it seemed to the police who were there that he would relax. And as soon as Stephen's name came up again, he would get nervous again. The son is now 52 years old, so he would have been 42, 41 at the time of Stephen's disappearance. Of course, we know Stephen was much younger than that. But when asked, well, Mark, what exactly do you do for a living? He said that he was working on a device to protect people who are waiting for public buses. And that he admitted that he's hard to find because there are a lot of drug people out there, and it's very dangerous out there. So he doesn't like to let people know where he is. This is the conversation that the police. Once again, I'm not making this up. You read it on the report. You decide for yourself. I'm just trying to give you the highlights. I did look Mark DiMaggio up. He does have a criminal record, drugs and some other things. And not even a month before Stephen disappeared, he did get ticketed for driving without insurance in Las Vegas. But none of these other drug charges or anything else were close to the time of Stephen's disappearance. Only this car insurance thing. But he did have drug issues, early 2000s back into the 90s, a variety of charges. Now, it seems, though, here we are, we're coming up on 11 years later. It doesn't seem that the police have been able to make a connection between Mark DiMaggio and Stephen. It doesn't seem like they've been able to make a connection between Mark DiMaggio and Brett Bishop, for example. It doesn't seem they've been able to make a connection between the DiMaggio parents and Brett Bishop or Stephen Kocher. All the DiMaggio says we were moving. That's true, but we didn't see him that day when we were doing what we were doing. Mark DiMaggio says, nope, don't know him. Never saw him. But you will read the report and you will get the idea that Mark DiMaggio, I don't know what he has going on. Maybe he does have some condition, and if that's the case, then I feel very bad for him. But the police report definitely paints him as being a kind of a strange individual. Strange doesn't mean guilty, but you would certainly like it more if these people had been very easy to contact, and that if they did have a son that they were living with, that he wouldn't act like he allegedly did and would not give like weird answers like he did. You'd certainly like something different than that so you could not suspect them. But this is what went on. Once again, you read the report for yourself. Twinkle says, when you think about it, Stephen's roommate was a criminal. The landlord was a criminal. So it stands to reason that Stephen was into something. He needed money. I agree, Twinkle. You can't deny that. We could go, of course, I've put forth the possible theory that being that we know that Brett Bishop was into selling prescription drugs, that maybe Stephen got wrapped up in that. Which never made any sense to anybody, that everybody realizes that Stephen was behind 3 months on his rent. What kind of landlord does that? Brett Bishop was Stephen's landlord. Brett Bishop steals Porsches. Brett Bishop is stealing prescription drugs. Brett Bishop is a convicted felon, and he's letting one of his tenants not pay rent for 3 months. Really? Okay. Charlotte says, wasn't there a DiMaggio who kidnapped a young girl and took off with her? Does not ring a bell, Charlotte. But you surely could be right. Also, regarding the Henderson Police Department, moving on to something else, there is no mention of Brett Bishop in the report anywhere that I saw. Not one word. They do mention the search that was done on April 10th, 2010. That's the search that I've talked about. I was there. And the report that I read, goes along exactly with how I remember it, where it was, how long it took, who was there. April 10th, 2010 is that day that I, of course, talked about in the Stephen Kocher episode that I put out in August of 2017. Talked about being part of a search, and it was April 10th, 2010. 2010. It was right by the executive airport in Henderson. Now, what was interesting, though, is that Mark DiMaggio, the way I read the report is that Mark DiMaggio, of course, claimed that he didn't know Stephen at all. But for some reason, he suggested that maybe Stephen could have gotten lost or gone out into the desert in this particular location near there. Once again, that's in the report. That might have been what led us to do that search in April 2010. Because even though we were there and I knew it was organized and everything, none of us were ever told why we were searching in that area. We were just told to do that. Now, something else that's brought up in that report, and that it has to do with the rent, is that Stephen's parents did give him money, $500. But it seems he did not use this to pay his rent. Now, maybe Brett Bishop is lying. Maybe he's just making that up. Maybe Stephen was totally caught up on his rent. I don't personally believe that, but it seems, though, that in checking Stephen's accounts and everything, that $500 was nowhere to be found. So that's my summary of those reports. Once again, you go to theunfoundpodcast.com, download those files for yourself and see what you think. The problem we have here is that, once again, 11 years later, none of those reports show any connection between Mark DiMaggio or the DiMaggios and Brett Bishop. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at the DiMaggios and Mark DiMaggio and think, well, there's maybe something going on here, or something seems weird. But we can also look at Brett Bishop and say, well, something seems weird there too. The problem is that unless you can make a connection between the DiMaggios and Brett Bishop, then you just have to pick one. And that's difficult. Maybe they were all in this together, but you would think that the police would have been able to figure that out after all these years. If they have, it's not in those reports. I've never heard anything about it. So maybe the DiMaggios are just weird people and they have nothing to do with the disappearance, and it's all Brett Bishop, or Brett Bishop has nothing to do with Stephen's disappearance, and somehow Mark and Steve really did know each other somehow. And Mark lured Stephen to that house for some reason, and something happened. Don't know. That's up for you to decide. You can read the reports for yourself. I'm going to answer one more question. So that's all the Stephen Kocher stuff. If we could talk about it in the discussion group. People can, post in there, and whatever you find catches your eye in those reports, you let us know. D, one of my favorite people, D, who posts the camel pictures in the, this week was particularly good. Let it show. D, you're so funny. D asked me what I would be doing if I wasn't doing Unfound. Well, that would have to be probably in a world that didn't have any missing persons cases. So we're talking about a world that is very, very theoretical. But it's just tough to say. The situation that I have in my life, I have a lot of choices. As you know, I don't have any kids. My money situation is fairly good. I would like to think that if I wasn't doing Unfound, I would still be doing something where I would be helping people, using the abilities that I have, my brain power, and what the skills that I think either that I've been born with or I've developed over the years. Now, what that would be, I don't know. Somebody asked me, would I be an investigator? Well, to be an investigator, you have to be a police officer first, and that just would not probably have cut it for me. I don't like that kind of structure. I don't particularly care for uniforms. So probably then we could be a private investigator. Well, maybe, but one of the criticisms that I've made about private investigators in general is that I think a lot of people get into it because they see they saw all these TV shows growing up, Magnum PI, Simon and Simon, Mannix, whatever else, and thought, man, that seems like, and all I have to do is go get my license and then I can be like they are. And that's just not real life. And of course, all the private investigator stuff that's going on in concerning Unfound over the last 4+ years. I'm not sure being a private investigator is all it's cracked up to be. So, and we know that most of the time private investigators don't really move cases forward at all. Maybe that's because of them. Maybe it's because the cases are very, very difficult. But what we know is a lot of people put out a lot of money and they don't get a lot in return. So I don't know if I might be able to get my license one of these days if I ever make the time. But would I really want to be associated with that particular profession, knowing what I know about it? Maybe not. So it's a great, great question. I mean, I could say I'd like to be a rock star. Probably not. I love music and everything else, but I don't know. I just don't know. D, it's a great. Charlotte says, good night. I have to get up early in the morning. Have a good night, everyone. Charlotte, thanks for taking part tonight. Thanks for joining in. Appreciate it. It's just hard to say, D. I think that I would have to still be doing something like what I'm doing now. It's very easy for me to say, no, I'd go be a race car driver or something. And I think that that wouldn't be very fulfilling. It would surely be a lot of fun and everything. But as I told you, I was talking to Kathy earlier today about some business stuff regarding Unfound. When you're single and you don't have any kids and you're probably not going to have any kids or anything, you start, especially at the age of 50 years old, you start thinking about, well, what am I leaving behind? For people who have kids, they can say, well, you know what? I'm going to raise kids and they're going to grow up to find world peace and they're going to cure cancer and everything else. I might not have done it, but maybe my kids will. I'm going to raise fantastic children that are going to make the world a better place. And that's fantastic. It's great. A single people who don't have any kids, we can't say that. So if we have those same aspirations about making the world better, then we can't leave it to somebody else and say, well, maybe the kids will do it. We have to do it ourselves. So not to say the parents can't do that too. They can. But, you start thinking about, I'm not, may not leave a legacy. What's it going to be like? Vanish off this world tomorrow. And would it be like I was here at all? Whereas at least people who have parents who have children, adults who have children, they could say, well, this is what I'm leaving behind. And they're great people and everything. For us, it's a little different. So I would certainly have to do something like that because that is important to me. So it would have to be something along those lines, but I can't say what it would be. Unfound is my child. Well, I'm going to go send it to its room then, Shuri. Ruth, good night to you. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Twinkle says you make the world a better place. Thank you, Twinkle. It's very kind. Tammy, what rock songs can you play on the piano? Well, Tammy, when I was playing the piano, I was more of a classical music person. Really, I played, and I don't listen to classical music that much, but I love to play it on the piano. I really did. Beethoven, um, Claude Debussy, Franz Liszt, Chopin, Mozart. Love them all. Love to play their music, and that's really what my concentration was. Played some jazz, didn't really care for it. But back in the day, I was known to play like the Charlie Brown theme. I had that memorized. I could play the Axel F, the Beverly Hills Cop theme. Dun, 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 dun. I could play that. I did end up playing, some pop music and things, and I certainly would like to get back into that. I don't have a keyboard or piano now, but it would be neat to get one again and, kind of start tapping out some Iron Maiden songs on the piano, because I never did that. So maybe maybe that'll happen, Tammy. Maybe. But really, when I was playing the piano, it was mostly classical music, and but like I said, I did end up playing some pop music, and I was in a band with the aforementioned Brad and Doug when we were in high school. And actually, we were pretty good. Did some Rolling Stones, some AC/DC, bunch of different, rock band songs. So, and that was fun when I had a keyboard. Twinkle, this is just as important as having children. Well, thank you, Twinkle. Maybe. But let's get to Friday's episode now. We are revisiting the disappearance of Robin Abrams. Claire de Lune is a fantastic tune, Katie. That was my grandmother Emma's favorite classical song. Classical piece. You don't call them songs. Classical piece. We are revisiting Robin Abrams' disappearance. Kind of decided that I was going to do this when I knew that we were going to be talking about her disappearance on Dr. Grace Telesco's show 2 weeks ago. And so I reconnected with Jody, her sister I hadn't talked to in a long time, and she put me in contact with a former deputy and investigator in Will County, Illinois, where Robin disappeared, where she was becoming a deputy before she got fired. And his name is Steve Kneckrum, Knickrem. And he happened to be the deputy who just happened to be out in front of his house that the day that Robin was pulled over and accosted by her fellow deputies, including Tony Marquez. And you'll remember that, going back to, if you'll listen to it, the interview that I did with Jody, she talked about how Jody was pulled over and this other deputy saw it in front of his house. This is that deputy. And he saw a lot while he was a deputy, then investigator in Will County. And I did a 3-hour interview with him yesterday. And he talks about the crookedness and corruption that he saw while he worked in Will County. And he did know Robin, not well, but he knew her. And his investigation kind of that he did on Robin's disappearance once he became an investigator around 1994. And he has some interesting stories there. So what's going to happen on Friday is I'm going to play a condensed version of the episode that played back in November of 2016. And then after Jody's original interview for 2016, Steve's interview that I conducted yesterday, I will play. And then there will be new commentary at the end. Like I said, this episode is going to be over 4 hours long. That's just the way it is. The original episode with Jody, I think, wasn't even quite 2 hours, but you add in Steve's interview that I did with 3 hours, because we had to do that long. And I think you'll eventually understand why when you hear it. But that is going to be this Friday's episode. And I'm telling you right now, what you are going to hear is going to disgust you. If it disgusted you back in 2016 or more recently when you re-listened to Robin's episode, it's going to even disgust you more when you hear what Steve has to say. He's a deputy. His fellow deputies tapped his own phone. They broke into his house. And you're going to hear about all of it. So that's this Friday. Here at Unfound, we don't care how long episodes go. And so you're just probably going to have to make time for it. I understand you'll have to watch it probably in smaller bits, but we're not like other programs where we condense everything down to an hour. If it takes 4 hours to cover Disappearance thoroughly, that's what we're going to do. So, but there are some files to read that probably will be important that you know about before Friday, and they are at the unfoundpodcast.com, right there on the front page, right there with the Stephen Kocher files. And these are things that Steve had sent me that I think that they will get your attention. So that's this Friday. We're going to revisit the disappearance of Robin Abrams. Like I said, I decided to do it when we covered it for Dr. Grace Telesco's show. And of course, it took, she had picked it out 3 weeks before we did it. So I started thinking about, you know what? Haven't talked to Jody in a while, and we needed to let her know that we were going to be talking about it. So we started talking, and she said that she was in touch with Steve. And then I started thinking, if I can interview him and, we can recover this and do it even better than we did back in 2016. So I was like, yeah, I like that idea a lot. Because a lot of these corrupt cops, surely some of them had something to do with Robin's disappearance. All of them are still alive. And as I've told Robin, or as I've told Jody, as I've told Steve, they may get off this earth without being charged with anything regarding Robin's disappearance, but I'm not going to allow it to be easy on them. I'm going to at least try to make them sweat it out. So we'll see what we can do. That's this Friday, the revisiting of the disappearance of Robin Abrams. Seriously, the number, I know that we've talked a lot about deputies and sheriffs and everything regarding Tom Brown's disappearance, and maybe we've talked about cops and a couple others, but this is surely the worst stories you're going to hear about police officers that we've covered so far in Unfound. No doubt. None, no doubt. So that's all I got. That's all I have for tonight on the agenda. What do we do? Talked about my disc golf tournament. I don't know. By the way, I'm not playing this weekend. I was supposed to. Just too much going on. I'm going to have to go to Pennsylvania this week. So I canceled my reservations and withdrew from the tournament. So I'll be right here in Clearwater Beach this weekend. So DeBerry tournament last weekend. So I won't have another tournament till the first weekend of January, which I need some time off. Steelers won today. Very cold here. Dad's coming down next week. I have to fly up there and drive him back. Who knows how long he'll be here. I'm sure I'll bore him to death. His birthday was yesterday. My nephew's birthday was today. Happy birthday, John. Talked about the Caleb Powell poll. Unfound Now, the disappearance of Alan White. The newsletter, Did You Get It? All the Stephen Kocher stuff, the files and everything. Once again, at theunfoundpodcast.com. Thank you for posting that, Cherie. Took a bunch of great questions tonight from Delane, from a listener who is unnamed, Paula and Dee. And then told you about this Friday's episode, the revisiting of to the disappearance of Robin Abrams from Will County, Illinois on October 4th, 1990. So we just passed the 30th anniversary. So that's all I got. Thank you so much. Please, once again, before you leave, do not forget to like this video. Give it the thumbs up on whatever device you're using. And I guess you'll hear me on Friday, 2:00 Eastern. I'll be posting it. It's going to be a 4-hour episode. Take your time with it. Good night, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. I really love doing these live shows. Good night.